Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in and welcome back to Virtual Fold-Ons. This is the second video in the installment. Last week I made a video about how to make a hidden page book, so if you haven't seen that, you should definitely watch that video as well. And for those of you who are watching for the first time, my name is Madeline Garcia and I'm the lead teaching artist at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts. That's a arts nonprofit in downtown Minneapolis that for the last 35 years has been connecting community and artists with book arts through all sorts of things like exhibitions, access to book arts and printmaking and papermaking equipment, access to supplies via our shop, and also artist support through grants and fellowships, not to mention so many book arts classes. I'm the lead teaching instructor there for all of youth programs, and every day there is, just about every day, youth classes happening and adult classes, and it's so great, and I miss it a lot, but until I can be back, I'm going to be here from home teaching these virtual book arts lessons. So thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to be making a sewn pamphlet book. It's a pretty simple sewn book that's super versatile. It does not require any glue, which I find refreshing. And one of the reasons I wanted to teach it was because I made a lot of books as a kid, and I always use staples to bind them. So I thought this would be an easy alternative. So to make this book, you'll need a few materials and supplies. You will need a bone folder, which is a bookmaker's go-to tool. We use them for a lot of things, namely scoring and folding. However, if you don't have one, you could use a popsicle stick or even the side of a ruler. You'll also need a pair of scissors, 4 paper clips, a pencil, a bigger needle. We recommend using embroidery needles. You will need a awl, which is another bookmaking tool. It's kind of like a pointy stick. It is, but if you don't have one, you can use a thumbtack. And then if you have an unused sponge, that'll be super helpful too. As far as materials go, you'll want to have 8 sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper. This is just regular copy paper for a printer. I designed the sizes of this book today to fit this size paper because I thought that most people would have it at home. You will also want a 9 and 11 by half sheet of paper for the cover of your book. And then lastly, you'll want a piece of string or thread that's 25 inches long. Wonderful. I think that's everything. The first thing we'll start with for this lesson. Oh, and really quick, I'll explain how the steps will work and demonstrate them, and then I'll pass it over to you, and then you can follow. Feel free to pause below while you're folding or sewing. Awesome. So you want to grab those 8 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper first, and then your bone folder or bone folder replacement. And you'll want to hold your bone folder with 4 fingers on one side and your thumb on the other side, like a comb. Like to practice. Great, and then I do also want to show you how we fold things at the Book Arts Center. We do something called a hold and fold technique, which is just holding one side of the paper down on your table and curling the other side over to fold. This is just useful because the paper stays in place and doesn't move around. So it just lends itself to more precision in bookmaking. So I'm holding the paper down and I'm taking my time to line up the corners here. Once the 2 corners are resting right on top of each other. I'm going to crease the paper with my finger, like so, and then come in with my bone folder or bone folder replacement. Increase the fold about 2 times. It's a nice looking folded piece of paper. So you'll do this, go ahead and get started, for all 8 sheets of your book. Obviously, if you have a specific book project in mind that only has 3 pages, 4 pages, or maybe has a lot more, that'll be different. And then as you're folding these sheets, feel free to open them up and start nesting the papers inside of each other, like so. Oops. And this is called collating. It's basically just getting your papers all in order, in place. If your pages had text on them or already had a story written on them, it'd be a lot more complicated to line them up and figure out which page is which. All right, 2 more pages to go. After you've folded all of your inner pages and you have them nested inside of each other, you can kind of bring them together like this. And this is called a signature, so it's just a bunch of pages folded in half and nested into each other. If you look at a hardcover book and you kind of peek down the spine, you can see sometimes that books will have lots of signatures all sewn together, but today we'll just be doing one. So after you've folded that, you'll do the same thing with your cover sheet. Taking your time. If your corners don't line up exactly, that's okay. There's something really special about handmade books and the imperfections and the character they have. So you can then open up your cover and center your pages in it. Oops. You want to take lots of care and precision to see that you have the pages centered, so there'll be a little bit of space here at the top and a little bit of space here at the bottom. Wonderful. And once you have those into position, you're going to get out your paper clips. And a quick reminder for friends who are new to using paper clips or have forgotten. On one side of the paper clip, there's 2 loops, and on the other side, there's 1 loop. We want to use the side that has 2 loops, and we can kind of treat that as a mouth, so with a top jaw and a bottom jaw, and the paper clips and the 2 loops will kind of eat the paper and hold it into place. So I'm going to slide my paper clips around that central fold, and it'll look something like this. So right now all of my pages are in place, and I'm just making sure that the spine lines up. So all of the center folds of the sheets line up with that fold of the cover. So once you're here, go ahead and grab out your pencil, and we're going to actually mark where our holes are going to go. If you want to use a ruler and do math for this, please go ahead and do that. I like to just eye it and make a best guess. This goes along with that handmade quality to books that I really appreciate. So I have one, and I'm going to use a pen so everyone can see. I have one dot in the center here, and then I'm going to do my next two dots or marks about 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom of the pamphlet. And I think this looks good, and so now I'm ready to make my holes. If you have an unused sponge, this is a really awesome tool for saving your tables. So at the Book Art Center, we use these and place them under the book so that when we're punching the holes, we don't mess up our tables. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have an awl, please go ahead and use it, or a thumbtack. Either work great. You do want to keep in mind that you want to punch the hole directly on the spine fold and then going straight down. If you do the hole at an angle, it'll be harder to sew the book afterwards. And you want to make sure that you go through all of the layers of paper here. I would not recommend using a used sponge. It sounds a little gross. And afterwards, you'll have something that looks just like this. The next thing we'll do is get out our thread and our needle. We do not want to knot the thread. I'm going to show you a way where you don't need to. Go ahead and lick the thread if you need to. So I'm just using a piece of embroidery floss, but you could use any sort of thread or string you have around the house. Okay, I can do this. Success! Okay, wonderful. So I've just pulled my thread through a little bit. It has a 2-inch tail here. And I'm going to start from the inside of the book, going through the center hole. I'm going to be really careful when I'm pulling the thread through, because once I leave I'm going to leave a little tail, and the thread gets to about here. I'm going to tuck that tail under a paper clip, and that's going to work as a safety and hold the thread in place while I'm sewing. While you're sewing this book, you won't want to pull too hard or you'll pull out everything that you've sewn. So now that I'm here in the center hole on the outside of the book, I'm going to hop up to the top hole and bring my thread in. It'll look something like this. And from here, I'm going to hop over that center hole and go through the bottom hole, which is yet to be sewn at this point. Wonderful. And then I'm going to go back through that center hole. And at this point, I can take off my needle and I can undo my thread that I tucked under the paper clip, and I'll have something that looks like this. Before I tie a knot, I will want to make sure that an end of the thread is on either side of the center string. When I tie my knot, I want to tie the center string with it. So I'm going to tuck one of these pieces of thread under, so it looks just like this. I'm going to pull up a little bit to make sure the book is taut, and then tie 2 knots. You won't want to do more than 2 knots or you'll have a big knot, a big ball of thread on the inside of your book, and it won't close correctly. And then we have this tail here on the inside of our book, and that's custom of most Sewn Pamphlet books. I wouldn't recommend cutting it all the way to the knot, because if for some reason the thread comes undone, you won't have a way of retying and knotting your book. So personally, I like to cut the thread around here so that it goes right to this length. And at this point, I can take off my paper clips. And that is it. Hopefully yours looks something like this. You probably have different colors and different paper and different thread at home, but hopefully you've successfully sewn your own sewn pamphlet book. There are so many things you can do with this. It's so versatile. These books are great for journals or sketchbooks, or maybe you want to write someone a really long birthday card. There are so many things you could do with this. For this book, I was thinking about putting in all the recipes that I've been cooking lately. So on 2 recipe cards, I wrote out 2 recipes that I've been making. One for savory oatmeal, which is awesome. And I was thinking about gluing these into this book and then also drawing some illustrations of those meals. I do have a few more examples. This is a book I made called Clouds, and I actually used blue paper for the pages, which is super fun. And with some white pen and pencil, I sketched some clouds. So you could get super creative using colorful paper. You could have different color paper for every page. There are so many options. I also made this smaller sewn pamphlet called All the Pets I've Had. And on each page, I drew a picture of a pet I've had. And I actually didn't color it in. So something you could do is sew and illustrate your own coloring book for a friend and send that off. I have another one here, and these are all different size books, so whatever size paper you have at hand, just go ahead and sew it together and add a cover that's a little bit bigger. This book, and I typed this up on a typewriter, is called Plants on My Block. And then on the first page, I taped in a leaf from a ficus tree. Hopefully these examples inspired you. I would really love to see what books everyone is making at home. Feel free to use the hashtag homebound edition to share those with us. We'd be super excited to see them. Next week, we are making pop-up cards. I'm so excited. This is a wonderful time to be sending mail and reaching out to those you love. So I have one example here, and I did go ahead and put some content in here. So we will be making the structure of this book next week and talking through content, and I'm going to have lots of wonderful examples. So please tune in, same time next Friday. Lastly, this class is free, and so please share these videos around. If you have the capacity to support Minnesota Center for Book Arts, that would be greatly appreciated. You can go to our website, mnbookarts.org, and there's lots of other fun stuff there. Thank you so much for tuning in.